Good afternoon. Welcome to Kent City Council workshop for Tuesday, January 6, 2026. This is our first workshop of the year, so Happy New Year, everyone, and welcome. We have great presentations, two great presentations on our agenda. First one is Community Immersion Law Enforcement Program, and we have Critical Areas Update. And I'm trying to see who is actually doing the presentation. All right, okay. Okay, we have Commander Hammond here.
All right,
welcome.
Council President, council members. I'm Assistant Chief Eric Hammond with the Support Services Division of the Police Department. And today I'm going to give you a brief overview of an update on our Community Immersion Law Enforcement Program. It is a program that started back in 2021 when the chief had a kind of a vision of and saw an opportunity on how to develop a program that can earn and sustain public trust in communities of color. So his vision was to take new recruits, officers that we just hired. They come into the police department. They spend a couple weeks with our training staff just learning the basics of what the PD is. And then we send them to to do community service in a program for about 8 weeks. That way they do it before they go to the academy, before they're in uniform, before they learn all the cop stuff that we learn. And that way it's a good interaction with our community members and with our new recruit to see exactly what they're going to be dealing with on the street before they become a police officer. So back in 2021, Assistant Chief Andy Grove was the one that took the chief's vision and made this program. So what were the goals of this program? I forgot to do this. Is that? Oh, sorry about that. The goals of this program, one was to get in-person engagement designed to impart understanding, empathy, compassion, and trust with our community, to forge personal relationships between our new recruits and the community and the groups that they were working with. It's to strengthen community or communication and trust. And then it gives our new recruits the ability to communicate effectively with Kent residents that they might, and community groups that they might never have seen before. So what does it accomplish? There you go. A couple things. One, it gives new officers the ability to understand that understanding the community is really one of the foundations of being a police officer. If you don't understand who you're serving, you really won't do a good job. So that's what CLIP really accomplishes. It also gives us community mentors and organizations that can shape our new officers. And it gives us, the new officers, the ability to know kind of what community groups are out there and what services are available when they hit the street solo. The program design, like I said, it's brand new officers that come in. Usually 2 weeks after they're hired, we'll send them to a community-based organization, usually for 8 weeks. Sometimes it's a little shorter. It all depends on when we can get them into the academy. We don't short them too much. At the most, we'll go to 6 weeks, but we try to keep them there for 8 weeks. Again, this is all before they go to the Basic Law Enforcement Academy. And then each week they have to do a weekly report that they send back to us that kind of says, what did you learn this week? You know, how can you use this to effectively become a police officer later? And a couple other questions that they sent to us. So the current status. So far, since 2021, we've had 64 recruits go through this program. We currently have 4 recruits in the program. We currently have 3 community-based organizations, which are World Relief, Vine Maple Place, and the YMCA. So what are our challenges with this program? One, it's always finding partners. It's really hard for most organizations to have supervisors on staff, have a place in Kent, and be able to have full-time work for our officers. Most organizations aren't built that way. The second has to do with our academy times. Like I said, sometimes it's 6 weeks, sometimes it's 8 weeks. And then we found, especially with World Relief, is that we don't have as many refugees as we used to. And so that's really lessened the amount of good work and stuff that they can learn up at World Relief right now because there's just not a lot for them to do. So our three organizations, and I'm just going to read this because this is their mission statement for World Relief. It's a faith-based organization whose goal is to serve the world's most vulnerable populations. They aim to tackle the world's greatest problems with holistic, locally driven solutions that lead to lasting change, whether in response to disasters, extreme poverty, violence, oppression of mass displacement, and immigration. World Relief's work in the United States specifically focuses on helping refugees and other immigrants in vulnerable situations rebuild their lives in a new country. So what has our officers done when they go up there? In the time they've been there, they help with immigration documents. They deliver home goods. They collect them and deliver them to the newly arrived participants when they're placed in a residence or apartment. They've taught ESL classes. And then they've also they've also driven immigrants and their children to different appointments, immigration meetings, stuff like that. So next is Vine Maple Place, which is about ending homelessness. Their mission statement is Vine Maple Place is a faith-based organization that breaks the generational cycle of homelessness by working with single parents and their children. Their approach offers safety, provides stability, and equips to self-sufficiency. The vision of Vine Maple Place is to end family homelessness in South King County, resulting in healthier communities where every child and parent has a stable home to grow and thrive. And they have an office both in Kent and in Maple Valley that our officers go to. So what have they done since they've been there? They really mentor and tutor youth and teens experiencing homelessness. They teach financial literacy and resume writing, and then they also screen clients for the various programs that they have. YMCA is our newest community-based organization. It's a nonprofit organization whose mission is to put faith-based principles into practice through the programs that build healthy spirit, mind, and body for all. They envision a future in which all people achieve health, gain confidence, make connections, and feel secure at every stage of life. The Y is committed to developing new generations of change makers who will create the communities we all want to live in. So far, we've only had 2 officers go up to YMCA. They spend a lot of their time working the front desk, so they have interaction with everybody that comes in and out. They also have been mentoring our youth and teens, and they've been assisting with activities for the at-risk youth, the elderly, and those with disabilities. So the impacts to our recruits. I brought 2 newer officers here today. I'm going to bring them up, and they're going to kind of explain which organization they were with and pretty much how it's helped them in their roles of being a police officer. So I'm going to call up Officer Carl Peterson first.
All right, hello, my name is Officer Carl Peterson. The organization that I worked with was Vine Maple Place. So I worked with them in the SEALIP program in the spring of 2023, shortly after getting hired. Some of the things that I learned from the program and working with them, I was actually the first officer to work with them when we started that partnership. I personally loved my experience and loved the people there. I appreciated their approach towards long-term stability, and they really welcomed me into however I could be helpful to them. So one of the things that I really enjoyed was working with the teens that they have there. They have an amazing family program. And so I got to work with the teens and help mentor them. And just during the weeks that I was there, seeing the first couple times that I interact with them, they're like, there's this tall white guy who's a cop, like we don't want anything to do with him. And by the end of it, I was getting hugs and everybody was sad that I was leaving to go to academy. And just that progression and development. Some of the other things that I did with them was working, like I said, they really focus on long-term stability, so it's really important to them to help people find jobs and create a stable life for themselves, right? So I helped some people with resume building, finding training programs with them. We got a lady into a forklift licensing class, right, so that she could have a stable, well-paying job to pay for her and her family. So those are some of the things I did with them and like I said, their approach to it, I really appreciated, and I appreciated how welcoming all the staff was for me. I currently work night shift, so I don't get to see them very much, but I went out of my way on FTO to stop by a couple times and say hi, and they were happy. I think at least they put on happy faces when I walked back in, so, I think since becoming a solo officer, some of the things that I've taken away from it is giving me a good insight into a lot of, like I'm reasonably privileged growing up, and so just some insight into a lot of struggles that I never dealt with, and interacting with those people face to face. I appreciated that, and it's something that I've tried to keep a perspective on when I'm dealing with people in challenging situations. And yeah.
All right, and the next officer I call up is Officer Michael Curry.
Hello, good evening. Officer Michael Corey. I too was at Vine Maple Place. I'm probably one of the newer ones that just went through Vine Maple Place. I was hired in June of this last year, 2025, and I was there until just before I went off to Academy in August. And I actually just graduated out of Academy just a couple weeks ago. But similar to Officer Peterson, one thing I really appreciate is the opportunity to connect with the piece of the community that I won't normally see. I'm a citizen in Kent. I live here in Kent. I call this my home. But the folks that I got to work with, I was in particular at the Maple Valley location. I got to connect with folks that I probably normally wouldn't see in my normal day-to-day just citizen life at all. And so being able to hear their stories and understand where they're coming from and how they got into some of those circumstances. Like, for example, I got the opportunity to train a couple of their classes for that long-term stability, resume building, budgeting, and stuff like that. And being able to understand where people are coming from and how they got in the situation, why are they facing homelessness, everybody has a story. And being able to take the time to hear their story, I think, is super important. And I think it's super important coming into the role of law enforcement and to be able to connect with the people that you're going and talking to and meeting connections with and stuff like that. So that was one thing that I found super valuable for me. You know, serving that community is what we do in law enforcement, but also being able to hear their stories and understand and not just build up biases in your mind like, oh, you know, you're in this because it's a self-inflicted wound. Not everybody has that type of situation, so being able to take the time to hear those stories. Working with the teen and youth program, also super valuable. One of my first few days there, I got to hang out and play basketball with a couple of the teenagers that were on site there. And we played basketball for probably a good couple of hours, had good conversation. They had no idea who I was or why I was there. And then we sat down at a table a little while after that, and then they're like, well, what are you doing here? Why, you know, you're new here, we haven't seen you before. And so I kind of told them my story, why I was there. And then they realized that I was an officer or working to become an officer, and they kind of exchanged a funny glance, you know, a white guy, cop. They just kind of gave each other that odd look. But I think in that moment, they also realized, oh, this is just another guy. There's a person behind that badge. And I think bringing that to this role, I think, is something that I look to do, and the humanity side of it, too. And so that was kind of a cool connection I was able to make with some of the kids there. But I think one of the biggest takeaways is, you know, there was all kinds of different jobs to do at Vine Maple Place, you know, whether it's working with the teens, teaching the educational classes from a couple nights a week and stuff like that. Even there was long days where I was just making phone call after phone call after phone call, connecting with past clients to see where they're at. Do they still need help? Are they still housed? Are they still employed? Things of that nature. And, you know, for example, one day I made probably 50 plus phone calls and only talked to 3 people all day long. And it felt very monotonous. But at the same time, I was there to serve a purpose, so the staff of Vine Maple Place can continue to do their jobs to help the community that was there and engaging. And so maintaining that service mindset was one of the biggest things I got out of it too. No matter how long my days were, if it was a monotonous day of just making phone calls, I was there to serve. And that's exactly the every day I went in there doing exactly that. And I think that's also something I took away from that experience, knowing there's going to be long days in the role of a law enforcement officer, but we're here to serve. And I think that was one of the big key engagements for me too as well. So.
Real quick, Madam President.
Councilmember Boyce.
Your basketball game must have been pretty good. Jump shot pretty good. Got to play with them for a little while.
Not at all. No,
No hanging on the rim or nothing like
no,
that.
definitely not. No.
Okay, all right.
They ran circles around me.
I think Councilmember Boyce was looking for a game. So.
Oh, yeah, no, definitely not.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and then I'm going to bring up Assistant Chief Andy Grove. He's going to kind of talk through the next steps of CLIP.
Thanks. Greeting, Council President, council members. We have the great fortune of having two parallel grants right now to support community immersion moving forward. And so the first one is from the Department of Commerce, and it's about 120 grand. And really that's focused on sustaining and improving the current community immersion program that we have. So the main spending there is a stipend for our community-based organizations per recruit. So because they're hosting, training, managing, and mentoring our recruits, we allot them a stipend for doing that. Secondly, we pay for transportation. So in some cases, our PD fleet can't accommodate as many recruits as we have, depending on our hiring flux. And so we're able to use that money for renting vehicles and for transportation. And then as we approach the 5-year anniversary of community immersion this fall, we'd like to have a CLIP appreciation event celebrating that with our partner community-based organizations, their clients, the City of Kent, the police department, and the recruits who have been through the program. We'd like to maintain that connection, celebrate that milestone, as well as our researchers from the University of Washington. What wasn't mentioned yet is that we have 2 formal studies conducted by UW that are independent and that have really promising, compelling data about the results of the program, which is how we're able to get those grants. The second grant is from the U.S. Conference of Mayors, and that's for $100,000. And we're really using that for what we call CLIP expansion. We want to replicate this model in other agencies in our state and even around the country. So we want to build a replication toolkit for other jurisdictions, like a how-to manual and online resources for people who are interested in replication. That might look like a workbook and physical training materials. It's definitely going to have marketing materials that are geared at replication, likely a website and potentially social media and content like videos. So that's all fluid right now as we're researching and vetting different companies to work with on that. It will also cover travel and presenting and corresponding with other organizations nationwide based on that interest. And then we'll also have a reserve for future stipends. As we anticipate hiring a lot more people, we're going to need that money for stipends for our community-based organizations. So currently, we're excited about the future, the 5-year mark. We've sustained this thing. We really are the first in the country to do it. We're super proud of these results, and we'd love to see this expanded around the state and even around the country. Thank you so much.
Councilmember Boyce.
Thank you, Madam President. Hey, great program. I remember when we implemented this here quite some time ago. And then to me, just hearing the story from the 2 officers really just indicated even more so that this is a phenomenal program and it's working. So I'm really thrilled about us being the first. And also, to me, I think this is a good story to tell. And hopefully there is other agency, right, that if you put this manual together that we can share so they won't have to recreate anything. But I'm just really pleased about this here and what we're doing for our community. You might have mentioned this here, but I didn't capture. So how many have we gone through this program?
64 so far,
Wow.
and we have 4 at Vine Maple Place right now.
Kudos to you guys. Great job. Thank you so much.
Councilmember Michaud, followed by Councilmember Shoker.
Thank you, Council President. Great work. Amazing. I know other cities, municipalities are interested in this, so that's really important that that we use that grant money to make a manual. That's really great public service for everyone. Seattle sometimes likes to say that they were the first, and I keep correcting them.
Good.
I'm like, no, you weren't. A question for the officers. I'm wondering if you knew that you were going to participate in this program before you were hired?
I did not. I did.
I'm just wondering if maybe it played any role in your decision on where to work.
Once I learned about it, I was really excited about the opportunity, just because, again, going into, making a decision to move into law enforcement, but, it was service driven. And so starting off doing this type of work for the first 8 weeks, I thought was the exciting opportunity. I look forward to it.
Great. And then have we looked at doing this for officers who have been on the force for a while?
We have not yet. We have talked through it. We just haven't gotten that much further yet with it.
Great. I would really like you to do that as well.
Councilmember Shoker.
Yeah, I just wanted to say this is a great program. I'm really excited and proud of Kent for coming up with this and excited about the possibility of having that manual. A question, so when they go to the organizations, the 8 weeks, is it cycled through different organizations or they just stay with the one that they're with for the 8 weeks?
They stay with the same one that they went to. Yeah, just because usually each time they go, they spend a couple days just learning about that organization and going through all the paperwork and stuff. And so we try to keep them in one, so there's less of that.
And also, when we originally designed the model, we had a committee of a lot of CBOs from around the city, and they were really focused on long-term relationship building, and so that's one of the reasons why it's not a rotation.
Thank you. And I also really like the idea of having seasoned officers' possibility of doing this.
Thank you. Councilmember Boyd.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the work you guys are doing. This I find this truly amazing. I really am interested in it. I have a question though. When you was talking about progress, Officer Gal, what type of progress are you looking for when you say progression when you're dealing with individuals?
Progression for the program?
I mean, for the individuals that you like, more or less saying that you're mentoring.
Yeah, so I think it's really about cultural competence. We're trying to expand the worldview of the group, and we're trying to expose our newly hired officers to cultures other than their own before an emergency. And so we want them to integrate and have customs, awareness of customs and language and different challenges, so that when they're in that emergency situation, they'll slow down, they'll have a more compassionate understanding, and then hopefully they'll apply some of the resources that they obtain from those nonprofit organizations who are mentoring them in real time to facilitate the help moving forward.
Okay, so they're putting themselves in the people that they're overseeing. They'll put themselves in their shoes, right? Saying, "Well, we know what you're going through, and we probably could help you." And my other question is, when you're there at the program, is it more female or more men? How does that work? If it's more men than female, do you have separate officers that deal with the men's side, and then you have other officers that deal with the female, or just the male officers deal with both?
During the program, it's the same, but on the street, we're definitely interested in who is the most effective officer on scene to relate to the person in crisis. And gender is certainly a consideration for that. And even temperament and disposition of the officers. Most crews on calls know who's good at communicating different things, or someone might be failing and tap out and someone else give it a shot. That's really a large part of our patrol tactics de-escalation strategy, and so that should be a consideration on calls, yes.
Okay, so this program has been going on for 5 years, right?
Yeah.
So I'm really interested in this. And thank you for the work you guys are doing. I hope you keep up the good work. Thanks a lot.
Any other questions or comments? And I just want to say thank you, Assistant Chief, for the presentation, and I want to congratulate Officer Corey and Officer Pearson for going through the program and on your graduation recently. So I also want to thank Councilmember Fincher, former Councilmember Fincher, who's done a lot of legwork in starting this program. I know this was her baby in the beginning, and I have always been a supporter of it. So I'm proud of our Kent Police for choosing to continue with this program. Thank you, Chief. And I am, I'm so proud of it, honestly. I'm just seeing the difference in our officers and how they relate to our community and how compassionate they are during not just this 8 weeks, but after they come out of the academy when they're actually on the street. So I appreciate that. Do you have a comment on that? You said there are 4 in White Maple right now. Is there a reason we're not going to Waterloo for YMCA yet, or they don't have a need at the moment?
Well, I had a conversation with the YMCA, and because of it's really good if I can send 1 officer there, but 2 is too many. There's not enough work for 2. And so the last 4 officers that have come on, they've come on 2 and 2. And so I haven't been able to send anybody up there because I don't want to split them up. We have a newer officer that started on the 2nd, that it's a single, so I'll be able to send him to YMCA. And then we'll probably try again, World Relief to try to send somebody up there. I just have to have some conversations with them because the last officer we sent, there was so little for her to do that it didn't really, we didn't get the impact that we wanted with her being
Makes
there.
sense. Okay. And if there are other nonprofits in the area who want to participate, they can reach out to you as well.
Oh, me?
All right.
Yep.
Awesome. All right. Any other comments or questions? All right. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Next, we have Lindsay Walker giving us an update on critical areas. Welcome.
Hello.
Hello. Good to see you again.
Yeah, it's good to see y'all. All right, so we have a project update for the Critical Areas Ordinance. Tonight, we're going to be discussing some comments received from state agencies on our draft ordinance, how we're incorporating those changes, and then we're really going to be focusing on some of the updated buffer widths for wetlands and fish and wildlife habitat conservation areas, as well as compensation for impacts to wetlands. We have some other slides on some minor updates that we'll move through, but the big focus is on those buffers. So we are in the home stretch of this project. This quarter, we will be looking at having our hearing with Land Use and Planning Board and then coming back to you all with their recommendations. So we are required by state law to give commerce and state agencies 60 days notice on our draft codes. That gives them the opportunity to provide comments on the draft codes. Overall, we received 65 comments from our 3 different state agencies on the draft ordinance. So we're currently working on responses to those comments. Some of the common ones that we saw across multiple jurisdictions included suggestions to adopt a monitoring program. This is a separate action outside the Critical Areas Ordinance, so we can look at that at a later time. We also saw suggestions to adopt requirements for low-impact development. That may not be realistic due to unsuitable soils, but also something we can look into. And then suggestions, of course, to use the site potential tree height for riparian management zones instead of fixed buffers. As we have discussed previously, this leads to a lot of uncertainty and a lot of added cost for applicants. Additionally, an important finding to consider is that there are studies for the Department of Fish and Wildlife. What they utilized was really not based on urban environments or even the difference between forested lands and agricultural lands. So because of this, each local jurisdiction has to make some level of policy interpretations for riparian management zones for what works best in their jurisdiction. So a couple highlights of changes for definitions. We're going to move through this slide and the next one pretty quickly since we've gone through these changes, but happy to answer any questions at the end of the presentation if y'all have any. And then here are the few changes that we have discussed previously about the general mitigation and monitoring for critical areas. So jumping into the wetland buffer widths. There aren't many changes except for Category 1 and Category 2 high-value wetlands. So previously, those buffers were either 200 feet or 225 feet. They are getting increased to 300 feet now. It is important to note it's pretty rare for us to see development near these types of wetlands. Category 1 wetlands are often, but not always, owned by the city, and they're utilized for conservation or recreational purposes. For example, the Green River Natural Resource Area would fall into this category. We do sometimes see the Category 2 wetlands along our shorelines like Panther Lake, but typically when we're having development around the city, we're seeing the Category 3 and the 4 wetlands, and there's not too much change of those buffers, so we're not expecting any significant impacts from this change. For general updates to the wetland portion of our proposed ordinance, we are adding clarifying language regarding critical area reporting. A significant change we got comments on is about what's allowed within that wetland buffer and where it's allowed at. So we are working with the Parks Department on this and have added other language to allow for public projects when there are no other alternative options that exist. So the most significant change that we're going to see are these compensation ratios. and they are based on the type of wetland and also the proposed mitigation of that wetland. Compensation ratios are triggered when there's a permanent impact to a wetland that can't be avoided. So for example, if the only proposed location for a roadway is through the wetland, then compensation will be required, but there are multiple options that they're given to meet that compensation. So while these changes add more compensation options, it does increase that compensation ratio pretty significantly due to the best available science that the Department of Ecology released. Other jurisdictions are having to adopt these same ratios across the board. What this really does, though, is incentivize avoiding impacts to those wetlands, and if they're unavoidable, then it creates more compensation for the impact. And we have discussed that overarching changes for the fish and wildlife conservation areas. As a reminder, these areas are previously called streams and stream buffers, and now they're called fish and wildlife conservation areas and their riparian management zones. So we did update this chart for riparian management zones buffers based on the conversations we had with other South King County jurisdictions and what they are proposing based on their urban environments. So we did propose to keep 100 feet for fish-bearing streams and then update the 40 feet to 75 for non-fish-bearing streams. We did receive comments on this from the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife. So we've updated the non-fish-bearing streams to 100 feet, and we're continuing to assess the fish-bearing stream riparian management zones as we're working with other South King County jurisdictions. And then to compare that, we have included some other jurisdictions here. Maple Valley was the first to adopt last summer. You can see a lot of people are around that 100-foot buffer. It is noted that Auburn proposed to keep 50 feet buffers for their non-fish-bearing streams, but they're still in their drafts and they're working through the comments they've gotten from the agencies right now. So we're not sure how they're going to work through that yet. And then Written also proposed non-fish-bearing streams to be less than 100 feet, but they added a condition that 80% of that buffer must be vegetated, or else that buffer does increase. So something to consider with best available science, it is to be consistent with neighboring jurisdictions. So we're working to make sure that we are consistent with that. So for next steps, we do have our project website online. We're continuing to finalize some internal comments and have some internal discussions with other departments. We are working on finalizing our responses to those state agencies based on their comments. And we'll be holding a hearing later this quarter, and then, of course, coming back to you all with their recommendations. So that does conclude my presentation. If you guys have any questions, I know we moved a little quick.
Thank you, Lindsay. We have, looks like a couple of council members. Councilmember Larmer, followed by Councilmember Michaud.
Hi, Lindsay. Thank you for this presentation. Question, when compensation is required because there is a permanent wetland impact, how do we measure that and make sure that compensation has happened?
Yes, so when they first propose that impact, they do go through a review process, and the city does hire a third-party consultant, a wetland scientist or biologist who's a professional in that field, to check what they're proposing. And then later they go out and confirm that they actually did the work. And then there's 5 years of monitoring required. So they put in a bond for what they're doing in the critical areas and the impacts and the mitigation. And they don't get that bond released until they've submitted a report after 5 years saying they've done everything, everything's still alive, they're meeting these standards. And our consultant goes out and confirms that's true.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay. For the riparian management zone buffers, I do think that we should change that type 3 to 100 feet, even though some other cities have decided to do something different. And then can you please explain what the point system is for? The habitat score, what is that?
Yes, so when someone is doing a delineation for a wetland, they're assessing the type of plants, the type of soils, and the type of wildlife that is in that wetland or that critical area. So when the biologist goes out there, based on either like the amount of wildlife or the rarity of the wildlife, if it's more suitable for additional wildlife or more wildlife, then it gets a higher point score to it. So if it's a wetland that doesn't have too much function, there's not a lot of wildlife there, then it's a lower category and lower habitat score.
Okay, thanks.
And this comes from the state and their guidelines.
Councilwoman Larmer, did you have anything follow up? All right. Any other questions or comments for Lindsay? Thank you for the presentation, Lindsay, and I do agree with Councilmember Michaud on this one. So, and I guess if my colleagues have any other comments, you can send an email at futurekent@kentwa.gov. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. With that, we are at the end of our workshop. We'll see you all at 7 o'clock for our council meeting, 6:30 for reception. Thank you.